What up, what up, what up? Welcome back to the Two Goat Show. We're your hosts, Miriah and Steph. Steph, happy Two Goat Thursday. How you doing?
I am good. Football's back in full swing, it seems like, yeah.
Football, at least for now, is here.
For
We'll be
now, yeah.
taking, a little break here shortly, but for now, yeah. So nice to actually be able to see our players like on the field doing real things, like not just having to talk about rumors, like we get to see our players and talk about our players, and oh, it's so nice. Chat, happy Two Goat Thursday. Hope everybody is doing wonderful. I see all the regular wonderful goats in the house. Throwback, usually always the first in the building. Appreciate you so much. Got Don in the house. Appreciate you all. Rob, Daniel Barry. Let's see, go through a couple. Say what's up. Bebop, what up? Hashtag 49K. Chrissy, got TL even in the house. What up? Hope everybody is doing great. Hope everybody's week so far has been wonderful. And yeah, we got some stuff to talk about. We're going to start with the wide receivers. And because, with all the stuff coming out of OTA so far, I want to say this is probably one of the things I was the most surprised about. And here's why, because up until this point, until a couple days ago, there had been accounts and pages, reporting that Jauan Jennings had signed his tender. So leading up to OTAs, up until now, I was thinking, well, I'm thinking Ayuk's going to be the only wide receiver not there, right? Why did I have a reason to think Jauan Jennings wasn't going to be there? Until, I'm reading down the list and it's like, oh, Debo's here. And, they're talking about Pearsall would be taking number 2 reps. And I'm like, okay, well, why is that? Later find out, obviously we know Ayuk wasn't going to be there, right? We figured that. But then to find out Jauan Jennings isn't there, I'm like, wow. So, something that was put out says Jauan Jennings was not at 49ers OTA practice. Stands to reason that he's interested in a long-term extension. So far, San Francisco has tendered Jennings at a second-round level, but he hasn't yet signed it. Several accounts has misreported that he had signed a couple months back. Now, this is something that me and TL have talked about a lot, and not just this offseason, for like the last couple years, that, Jauan Jennings just being tendered. It's like you couldn't have offered him at least a 2-year deal, at least some stability, some, okay, this team actually wants me here, I don't have to pick up and move every, something like it's hard as any sports person, you got to pick up and move your family, at least let them know, okay, I'm going to be here a couple years, every single year. It's like, okay, a tender. Okay, a tender. Okay, a tender. And it's like, this guy was almost, had things went the right way in the Super Bowl, could have been our Super Bowl MVP, and it's like, how, if I'm him, I'm thinking, how much more do I have to do or to show this team that, what do I got to do to prove this team to at least get a couple year deal out of them? So I completely understand why he hasn't shown up, but it's like, we haven't heard nothing, even that the 49ers are trying to work on a deal with him at any point, so I don't know. What are your thoughts with this whole Jauan Jennings situation? I saw under a post that one of the 49ers beat reporters had written about it, and somebody asked, so what happens if he doesn't sign? And they're like, well, he doesn't get paid. So where are you at with this whole Jauan Jennings situation? Do you think it's something we have to worry about? Do you think the 49ers should offer him a couple year deal? Or what's Jauan Jennings situation to you, Steph?
Okay, well, on that last point, what happens if he doesn't sign his tender this season? He's basically forfeiting the season for himself. And not just that, but he loses an accrued season in the NFL, and the 49ers can still tender him the following year. So he has
Yeah.
no leverage in this situation. You add on top of the fact that the 49ers drafted 2 wide receivers in this draft. So it feels like a bit of a choice, like an interesting choice on Juwan Jennings' part to do this at this time. Now, you mentioned he had a hell of a performance at the Super Bowl. So if there's any time to ask for a raise for Juwan Jennings, it is this time too, if we're just
Mhm.
looking at that context. But looking at the entire context, it's like, well, I don't know how much leverage you really have. So I get what he's trying to do. I respect it. I want for players to get paid. I just don't know if it's going to work out for him. And what I think, I mean, it's too early to say. In May, right now, before we know what Ricky Pearsall is going to be, before we know what Jacob Cowing is going to be, I would say, yeah, like maybe just give him, a reasonable deal. I also don't know what he's asking for.
Right.
The 49ers are also like trying to get Brandon Ayuk paid, right? So like that also adds to the, I don't know if this is the right time to be doing this thing for Jennings, although I get it. And so yeah, I just I don't think it'll happen. And it's risky. I think it's risky on his part to do it because let's just say, Ricky Pearsall does ball out in OTAs and
Mhm.
is just OTAs, but what if he does it in training camp, right? Does Juwan Jennings plan to attend training camp? How far is he willing to take it? Because as of right now, it's just OTAs. It's
Mhm.
voluntary. It's not a big deal if he's not there. If we're being honest.
Right.
But once you get to training camp and that stuff, like you start getting dinged for days that you're not there. And so is he going to continue to do it then, or is he just going to, go ahead and sign his tender at that point? So I don't know. I don't think the 49ers feel moved to pay him just based on this alone.
Yeah, and Bebop brought up here like he sees it getting paid like KB next year somewhere else, and like that's exactly how I have felt about this situation with Juwan prior to, like, that was even when we thought he had signed his tender, not
Yeah.
before any of this shit. Like, was that it was going to be like a KB situation, like our third down guy, but do they feel he's really that important to us? Like, can somebody else come in and take over once, like exactly what happened with KB. Everybody was so like, oh, that's our guy on third down, and now he's going out somewhere and get paid, and he got the bag, for
Yeah.
what he had done. But look how easily we replaced him, right? So like we all love Juwan Jennings, and what I'm worried about replacing is the dog in Jennings, right? Like if he goes somewhere else, do we have that dog wide receiver? Do we have somebody that's blocking somebody 15 yards off the freaking field? Like, like, do we have that to replace him with? So that's where like I wouldn't say I'm worried. Like, I don't think, like you asked, does he take this in the training camp? And you talked about like him losing the season if he doesn't sign and whatnot. Like I highly doubt that it would get that far,
Yeah.
because like think
Exactly.
about like what's the tender worth, like a couple mil. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's not
Yeah.
life changing money that he would get if he signed a few year contract, right? It's not the money he's looking for to set up his family for decades and people down the line, but it's still a couple of $1,000,000. Like, is it worth throwing that away? Like I highly doubt it, especially for somebody that just keeps getting tendered and tendered and tendered and hasn't got that big contract yet. Like that would be so stupid. I think, like, I understand you want the bag, but it's not worth throwing a couple $1 million in the trash. It's like, he had put out on his social media yesterday and said, put in so many hours, got a doctorate in football. So I'm like, are we going to start seeing like the social media? Because as far as I know, he's not really that active normally, right? Like, I don't normally, well, I'm not on like Instagram and all that shit, but like, I don't see, like Brad and them posting, that Juwan Jennings says too much stuff, so I'm like, interesting that, he doesn't show up to training camp. I mean, to OTAs. We just find that out, with yesterday, the day before, and now he's posting stuff on social media. So I'm like, I don't know. TL says his tender's under 5 million. Yeah, I think it's just a couple, maybe 2-3 million.
4.8.
Oh, 4.8. Okay. Yeah. So yeah, like that's not money that you just.
But that's a decent amount. Like,
yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, for somebody that hasn't signed that big contract, like, is it worth throwing that in the trash and being in the same situation again next season? Like, I just don't see that. And he just doesn't seem like, I don't know. I just can't see him showing up to stuff that's mandatory for him to be there.
Another thing that I'll add, though, is just another reason why I think like the 49ers aren't going to, give him an extension necessarily, is other teams had a chance to like trade for him and match that second round tender offer and give him that same contract or an extension. And I didn't hear of any teams doing that. Mm-hmm. So that's your market, right? And so that showed that for that price and for that second round pick, like, teams weren't willing to do that. So, the 49ers can certainly also point to that as well and be like, well, no, mm-hmm. Like there's really no, as far as business goes, there's no reason for the 49ers to budge on this. So yeah, if we're playing a game of chicken here, I think, the one most likely to fold because they have little to no leverage is Juwan Jennings.
Yeah. Let's just take this into some other people that didn't show up. Again, it's voluntary. We get it. But after I've been thinking and prior to this year, like, I always remember, and especially last season, it seemed like we had great attendance and even voluntary stuff. And last offseason, it seemed like the players were just, remember, it was coming off, we lost in the playoffs to Philly, right? And we lost, Brock got hurt, all this. And the players obviously felt like they got robbed, right? We had a great team. They thought we would be in the Super Bowl, had Brock not got hurt and all this. So I felt like them showing up last offseason, they were just more, I don't know what the word is, invigorated or more like ready to get to work. Like, they felt they had something to prove. And now this offseason, I don't know if is this where the Super Bowl hangover type of shit starts? Like, I just feel like, like a guy like CMC, why isn't he showing up? He's the highest paid running back in the league. Like, he wants more money. What's he not showing up for? Because last offseason, he showed up to all the voluntary shit. He was one of the guys in there that felt, oh, I'm in a new team. I'm here to work. I need to get around my teammates. I want to be working with my guys. I want to get the, be around Purdy. I want to do this and that. And now, where is he? I mean, so I don't know. It's just very interesting. Some guys that obviously Trent Williams, like, I know he's not going to show up, but it's like, to be there, at least if you're not going to do work, like Kittle, I know people are on his ass because he showed up and he's not doing shit, but at least he showed up. He's there to get around his teammates, to meet the new guys, to, start building this. It's a team fucking sport. If half the team isn't there, you can't start building stuff. And literally half the team on the offense and half the team on the defense is missing, whether that's half to injuries and half to people just not being there.
I'm not worried about it. I mean, I think yeah, it could be part of the Super Bowl hangover. I mean, that's tough mentally to climb the mountain, you get to the Super Bowl, and then you lose in a heartbreaking way. For some of those guys, it was their second time going through that. Um, Now I understand some guys, are back. Nick Bosa's there. I mean, he had
Mhm.
never been there before in OTAs, so
We're about to talk
so
about him,
you
so
know,
don't
yeah. On
ruin
the
it.
other hand, you do on the other hand, you do have guys who haven't been there before but are there now. So I'm not too worried about it. As far as like Christian goes, I think there's a lot of speculation as to why he's not there. I don't think like I think we're just putting two and two together and trying to make it make sense as to why
Mhm.
he's not there. Um, I wouldn't be surprised if he isn't even asking for a raise or anything, like, and he maybe just has some personal stuff he's got to take care of. He has a wedding coming up. And so I was talking about this yesterday with Desi, and we were just talking about how he's the kind of guy that's like so locked into whatever he's doing. So
Mhm.
whether it's like his off-season training, he's going to be locked in on that. If it's going to be his wedding, he's going to be locked in on that. So maybe he's just locked in to his wedding, personal thing. He has every right to do that, and that's could be a once in a lifetime thing. And he should
We
take that
hope.
time if he feels that's what he wants. Malik Collins, for example, he said he'd be back next week when
Kids
his
graduate.
children have their graduation. So they don't have to be there. So if there's a personal thing that's going on in their lives that they would deem more important, and I mean, yeah, like hell yeah, do it, right? So
Right.
it's OTAs. I don't think it's that big of a
Mhm.
deal, and I think Christian McCaffrey's the kind of guy that we know he's still working out,
Yeah.
even
Mhm.
even though he's not there. And so I think he has a grasp of the offense and things like that. I think it's more important for some of the defensive guys to be there because there was just so many new defensive coordinator, so many
Mhm.
new guys on that defensive line in the secondary. Like they definitely should be together and kind of learn each other. But the offense is more or less like the same dudes. So aside from the guys who are on the bubble who need every rep they can get, I'm not too worried about the guys who aren't there.
Yeah. Red Eye says June 4th through 6th is mandatory training camp. Everyone better show up or else fines are levied. Assume it's a mid-June wedding. And yeah, it's like I saw a lot of people giving like Collins a hard time, and it's like your kid only graduates, one time. like
Yeah,
like and it's like
yeah, that's
when
crazy.
and with CMC and the wedding, it's like when do you expect these guys to schedule their life events to, like the stuff
Right,
that is
like
schedulable? Obviously, like with babies' births and stuff like that, you can't even schedule it. But it's like, when are they supposed to do this stuff? They can't do
yeah.
it during the season. They can't do it during training camp. You can't do it. It's like they only have a couple month window to be able to do this stuff. So yeah, I'm not too worried. There are some questionable ones, you know,
Yeah,
but
for sure.
it it is voluntary, so we'll definitely see. Hopefully, and like Red Eye says, everyone better show up because yeah. Um, some other stuff coming out. Oh well, let's talk about Bosa. Let me pull it up. I know Steph wants to be talking about Bosa all the time, so she's already trying to cut into it. So yeah, both of that camp. Everybody was super surprised hearing this. They did break it down, him and Kyle both, obviously, like with 2020 being COVID, that's why he wasn't there. 2021, he was hurt. The next year, contract
Yeah.
negotiations, yada, yada, yada. But I thought it was interesting that Bosa says Kyle called him up and told him, he says that he stated to him why it would be important for him to be there and asked him if he agreed. And that Bosa was like, I absolutely agreed with what he was saying. So that's, so I'm here. He said it was good to get around the new guys, obviously, you know, and that he wanted to be around. Very, the most crazy part to me is that Kyle actually called him to tell, like, pretty much tell him, like, get your ass to freaking OTAs. So I thought that's very funny. But like, Bosa, you were just given this big ass freaking contract last season, right? We know that you weren't here last year because of contract negotiations. Obviously, we've seen what that did to your season. You didn't, you were a captain the year before. You didn't even get your captaincy. Is that a word? Captaincy?
We're gonna make it a word.
You didn't even get that back. Like, the players didn't even vote that for you, like, you back to being a captain because your ass wasn't there. And now your head coach has to call you and tell you, hey, Bosa, you know, it probably would be a good idea for you to get your ass in here because, you know, your entire D-line's new. And so, yeah, cheers for Bosa being there. But come on, dude.
Do we know that Bosa was not going to go before this call, though? I think he would have.
He said that he was planning to go next week. That he wouldn't have been.
I mean, so that would have been fine. Like, I mean, and Bosa even said, like, he never really got the chance to even go to OTAs before because, you know, his rookie season, it was COVID. After that, it was he was rehabbing from injury. And then last season, of course, dealing with his holdout or whatnot. So, you know, I think he would have probably shown up. And yeah, even if he didn't show up for the full 2 weeks, it doesn't matter. What I thought was funny when Bosa did his presser, he was like, yeah, like, it's actually less tiring or it's less work or something like that than
the
what
workouts
I do.
Are lighter.
Yeah. Than what he does back home. So I was like, oh my God. That doesn't surprise me, but it was just still hilarious to hear. So that might be part of the reason why he was like, yeah, I'll just go, you know, the second week to meet guys. But yeah, I thought it was funny. But yeah, I mean, he's a veteran now. Yeah, former captain. I think he'll probably be a captain again this year.
I agree.
And you know, he's a stalwart on that defense, and in particular the defensive line now with Eric Armstead not there. So it's kind of all Nick Bosa, and you know, he is going to be a huge help in getting the new players up to speed with everything, and just, you know, leading by example with some of those guys, and just kind of show them, you know, the 49er way that they do things. So yeah, I'm excited that he's there. I think that's huge.
TL, I saw your question. That is one of our things that we're going to talk about. So yeah, we'll get to it. Well, so we heard from Bosa too on Brock Purdy, and he said that Brock Purdy reminds him of Scotty Schefter, except about the getting arrested part. Now, I have no idea who this was or about the arrest or anything, right? So it's funny because as soon as I get done listening to that press conference, I'm going through, and the very next video that I see is about some update to Scotty Schefter, whatever his arrest case, whatever. So I'm like, oh, this is the guy, you know, so let me look. So I didn't know he's a golfer, right? I didn't know that he's a golfer. I don't watch golf, right? And when I heard it, like, I'm thinking that he's comparing him to like an old quarterback or like somebody I just never heard of before, like at least a football player, you know, not somebody in a totally completely different sport. So do you know anything about this guy that he compared Brock to, minus the arrest? I did watch the arrest video of him pulling his car up, and the freaking cop like had his arms all the way in his freaking car window and shit, like his entire head under in his car window. I'm like, well, yeah, like you're crazy already, cop. Like, yeah, like what the hell? So I watched all that, but like prior to any of that, did you know who this guy was?
No, I'm not one to care for golf. I assume if I watched a lick of golf that I would know, because yeah, he's he's the top of his game. But no, I didn't know who he was. It was a huge story though. I saw that when he got arrested. So
Yeah, I have no idea. Like he compared like the way Brock is like to him, and I'm like, okay, well, I don't know how that guy is to even know, but let's hope Brock's not getting arrested anytime soon. He also mentioned that they asked him if he talked to Brandon Ayuk about the contract stuff, and he just said that he told him that he did talk to him, and that he told him to keep his head up and try to stay positive. Sorry, my brother-in-law is coming over, so my dogs are gonna go crazy. So wrapping kind of the only thing I had to talk about BA was that, and then that video. Did you see the video? Obviously, you saw a Brandon Ayuk training, and he's like in his backyard. I'm guessing somebody's yard, and they're like throwing the football to him, and it's like between like tree like limbs. First of all, I love that tree. That tree is hella dope. I love trees like that. But like like releasing these videos like, okay, well, I'm not at training camp, but I'm still working, and finding like always the videos that stick in my mind are like the ones of Juice like pulling his wife, and like all this shit like to work out, and like all these weird workouts that the guys find a way, especially in 2020 when they couldn't go to gyms and stuff, and they all had to find like different ways to work out. Like I always loved seeing that stuff. So I thought it was cool that Ayuk showed that video, and hey, you're not going to OTAs, and you're holding out because of a contract. Like you got to find a way to do what you got to do. So at least he's freaking putting in the work.
Yeah, gotta get creative. I do appreciate that he's still not just working out, because like it's one thing to work out in the gym, like anyone can do that, but it's like actually doing football stuff in his backyard, no less. So I don't know if the ball had quite the zip as Brock Purdy's throws,
right.
But you take what you can get.
Yeah. All right. So some reports coming out of Danny Gray that so far in camp, he's been impressing. That's what I heard. The reports I've seen and heard from a couple different beat writers. So I don't know. I mean, they're reporting that Pearsall had terrible days in rookie minicamp, and now reporting that Danny Gray, at least, he's catching his targets and stuff. So, I mean, did you hear different that he's having a bad camp so far?
I haven't heard one thing about Danny Gray, and I also have seen good things about Ricky Pearsall. So I don't know. I'm a little confused right now.
Well, no, Ricky Pearsall during OTAs has been good, but during rookie minicamp, he wasn't good. That's what
I heard he was.
Were.
So yeah, I mean, what I saw was he was fine. He was gaining separation. It was just the quarterbacks that sucked.
Probably has something to do with it. Yeah. But yeah, from a couple different beat reporters I saw, and I was surprised because I had been so long since I heard anything about Danny Gray. And obviously TL, we didn't even talk about Danny Gray on our show, and he seeing that reports are that he's looking impressive so far. So yeah, definitely the reports are out there. Do you think, I mean, is there a way Danny Gray even makes this roster?
No.
Not at all.
No. No. I mean, if you look how the depth chart goes, and the 49ers usually keep 6, maybe 7. Let me see how many they kept last season, wide receivers, because then that'll give us a better idea. I'll just look this up really quick. Or if someone knows off the top of their head, but let's just assume
practice squad guy that we keep calling up, like we do all those vets and shit that they always keep around for no reason.
I guess, but like you got Ronnie Bell too, who you just drafted last year. So between those two, let's just say, who are you going to prefer between those two guys?
Well, Ronnie Bell, of course.
Yeah, exactly. Then you got Chris Conley. Chris Conley, like when he has had his opportunity, like he's a vet. He has shown he can be reliable.
So
I don't care. I mean, he's a vet. I mean, I think he would be more likely to get a spot on the practice squad over Danny Gray. The only guys where it's like it could go either way, I mean, Tay Martin and Tariq Owens, right? Like, I don't know, but no, I
Thanks,
don't
mate.
see Danny Gray. He he'd have to impress the hell, I think, out of the 49ers, um, and show something he's never shown before, to which isn't a high bar, but I mean, he'd have to look a lot better than the 6, 7 guys ahead of him, and I can't see that.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know what the hell his deal is. Like, it seems like he just is like, we hear, oh, he had like this injury, but it never seemed like it was like a season ending injuries or anything. It's not like he tore his ACL or something like that. It's like nothing to keep him off the field. And it was like, okay, well, they could be opening up his window. And it's just like, we kind of just never hear about him again. And it's just like, it's really, really weird situation with Danny Gray. Like,
yeah.
The whole thing that when he was drafted, we all thought he was drafted, right? Because he was drafted the same time as Trey Lance. So for Trey Lance to have a weapon to be able to take advantage of his speed. And then obviously Trey Lance didn't end up starting. Jimmy started. We knew Jimmy couldn't take advantage of Danny Gray's speed, and it's kind of been like just a weird thing since then. It's just like, I don't know. Maybe they could trade him.
For what?
Who knows? 7th round pick, another player that ain't working around somewhere else.
I don't know.
It's just weird that you would give up on somebody that hasn't even had a chance to show anything.
I mean, what about Trey Lance? That's a guy they gave up
him for something. They traded him for something. Exactly
that's
what I'm saying.
But like, that's someone who they gave up like a shit ton for.
And it didn't work, so you traded him and got something. Like, trade the kid and get something.
Yeah, I don't think they could get anything for Danny Gray.
I don't know. I wouldn't just be that quick to write him off that he's just like a piece of trash that's not worth shit. When
I just think
he's
like there's a
zero opportunity.
there's a window in the NFL where, like, if this was his second year, then and we were having this conversation, then yeah, like he'd have trade value, and we would give him more chances, but his window of opportunity, at least here in San Francisco, it's kind of closed.
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying. I'm like, obviously, our team's too talented, but you're gonna tell me like a team, you got some of these shit ass teams. Like, look how many wide receivers the Bears for the last 4 years have picked up that were castaways from every single team in the NFL that didn't work out anywhere. Like, they gave guys a chance that should have never even been given another chance. So you're telling me that there's not some, obviously not some Super Bowl contending team, but there's not some team that doesn't have, like wide receivers on their team that are shittier than Danny Gray. Like,
I'm not saying that, but quick.
Exactly. Dante Pettis got chance after chance on 3 freaking other teams for years and years, and Dante Pettis
wasn't he a 2nd round pick? So where you're drafted also matters. I mean, Danny Gray was 5th round pick, so 5th round pick. He has that going up against him, and then hasn't played in like what season is he on? 3 seasons.
Mm-hmm.
So there's just a lot going up against him, I think. I mean, Miriah, I wouldn't be surprised if like the 49ers want to put it out there that he's impressing to see if they could get anything for him.
Well, that's what I'm saying. We know the 49ers
they got to make
shit like that.
They got to make some kind of effort. Yeah, they'll try. I mean, they'll try to get something for him. I just don't think they will.
And if they don't, I mean,
we could put a bet on it.
We held these scrubs on, like, seriously, like at least 5 wide receivers on the practice squad for the last 3 freaking years. Old ass wide receivers that have been kicked off teams for years and years and years. And we're just going to keep them around because they're a vet that hasn't done shit. That's done absolutely nothing up until this point, and no other team in the NFL wanted them. They don't come snatch them off the practice squad. They just sit on our practice squad. So you're telling me that we can't give the young kid a chance? Like, Now that we have a quarterback that can actually take advantage of him,
It's
like
just this is also the deepest that the wide receiver room has been, I think, under Kyle Shanahan too. So that's just another thing going up against him.
I thought so too, TL, but I can't remember. I don't know. We'll see. What's up, Tanya? I see you. And I saw, what's up, Sin? All right. So another thing coming out was that I'm kind of surprised and wondering what the situation will be there now is that it was reported Jake Brendel has knee tendonitis. Mm-hmm. Now, this reminds me a lot of, and obviously on the defensive side, but still the line, Javon Kinlaw. Like, you're a big guy. You got to be bending at your knees to play the position that you freaking play. And now you have knee tendonitis. Now, Jake Brendel's a center that's constantly bending at his freaking knees. Mm-hmm. And a big guy, right? With knee tendonitis. So they said he's not practicing right now, that he probably won't practice till training camp. So we'll see when training camp gets around if he really practices or not. You know, how much this knee tendonitis affects him. But reports are that they have Feliciano, taking the starter reps at center. If Jake Brendel is not able to go, like if this knee tendonitis is a serious thing, and we've seen this affect people's careers, right? Is Feliciano an option that you would want to see at center? Like, I'm thinking if we could get a Feliciano and Pooney is able to beat out whoever else he's going to be competing against, right, at right guard. And we saw a Feliciano Pooney center right guard, moving into those situations. Is that something that you would think you would be interested in? Or who would you suggest to take over for Brendel if this knee tendonitis is something?
Yeah. So, just based on the practice reports, when like Brendel wasn't there, the 49ers had John Feliciano at center, and then followed by Nick Zakelj, and then the rookie Drake Nugent. Pooney was backup right guard. So I don't know if they would throw Pooney into the fire like that. I think it'd be way more likely that they'd roll with Feliciano just because he is a veteran. And he's had prior experience at center. If you look at the 49ers track record on centers, they've all been vets. I just don't, and they hold a huge responsibility at the line of like setting protections and things like that. So I just can't see Kyle Shanahan being comfortable with a younger player there. I know they've been like grooming
Feliciano at center and Pooney at right guard.
Yeah, so that's how I see it as well. And I think Nick Zakelj, they've been grooming him for that spot. I just don't know if he's ready yet. So that's why, I think Feliciano would probably then be the next man up in that case.
And he started at center his year prior to coming to the 49ers, if I remember correctly, right?
I don't recall personally, but I know he had experience in that. So
yeah, I think that was his year that he started at center, was the last, so 2 years ago. So I mean, he has recent, starting experience there. And now a year, obviously not at center in our scheme, but at least a year in our scheme, to know what the hell's going on, right? And if looking at the way Feliciano played for us, last year once he came in, and he doesn't seem like he's the most gifted athletic dude, right? But he seems like he was a lot smarter when he came in, taking over for Burford, and just kind of knew what to do, right? Like it seemed like he fit right into that O-line. What's up, Misa? So
Mhm.
I'm thinking that, like you talked about, you have to have the smarts to play center in this scheme. And like, I'm thinking like he could come in and, do well there. And who did they say has been starting in the right guard spot? Do you know?
I don't know. I don't, at
Because
least
if
like I don't think Barrows mentioned that in his article. I don't know if anyone else had that, but
because if Feliciano's, starting at center, so that would leave
it'd
Burford.
probably be Burford, if I had to
And
guess.
then because I'm wondering like who he's then competing against, like who Pooney's like really compete, if Feliciano
If
is,
yeah,
taking
yeah.
that center spot, like who's Pooney competing against for that right guard spot besides Burford?
Yeah. And then on the other hand, I was also curious because Trent wasn't there too, and I don't remember seeing anyone say who was at left
Mm-mm.
tackle. So maybe Jalen Moore, I don't know. Uh but and I'm assuming Aaron Banks was probably at left guard. So
Hey, Miss Debbie. Yeah, definitely will be interested to see how this whole thing with Jake Brindle and his knees plays out. And then, we'll kind of have a better understanding of how, at least how we think they're going to switch people around, right?
yeah.
All right, so let's see. Coming out. Let's go to talk a little bit about what the coaches. What time is it? All right, we're good. About how what the coaches had to say. Brandon Staley, we got to hear from him for the first time as the 49ers assistant head coach / defense. I don't know what that means, but hey, that's his title, so we're going with it. Anything like really that you can take away? What did you take away from hearing, from him, and what he had to say?
Well, I mean, honestly, like his presser was a little anticlimactic to what I thought it would be, I guess, but like maybe I hyped it up a little too much in my head. Of course, like he was asked what his role is going to be, which like has been asked a million times to like everyone else before, but like finally he got to answer. And what do you know, it sounded a lot like the answers we had gotten from all the other people. So again, like maybe I was just hoping for something different or maybe like a little more detail, but basically, yeah, like he's going to help Kyle on some things, but he'll mostly be focused on the defense. It's like, yeah, we already knew that. And then yeah, I guess that explains the / defense in his job title as well. One of the things that I did kind of like in his presser is like anytime he was talking about the 49ers, he was saying we like already.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, I think he was even, I don't know. I feel like that doesn't always come natural to people. Like I don't think I would have be doing that right away. And so it's just clear he already feels like he's a part of what the 49ers are doing. Um, and so I don't know. That was just nice to hear. And yeah, I think that he answered questions pretty well. He definitely didn't seem like ill prepared or like it was too much for him. So, and I think it's obvious like the respect that he has for what Kyle Shanahan and John
Mm-hmm.
Lynch has built. So I truly think he's just happy to be a part of it and wants to add whatever he can.
Yeah, I agree. Like he brought that up a lot, like teaming up with Kyle and John and the respect he had for Kyle and John. And it was never just like working with Kyle thing. Like it was always a Kyle and John thing, and like he even brought up the owners and like made sure he paid respect to everybody, and yeah, and I definitely caught on to that we thing because there was a question. I can't remember at the top of my head, but it was like something about maybe his past team when they played the 49ers
Mhm.
or maybe it was when like going against Nick Bosa or something. It was something to do with his last team going against the 49ers. And he kind of like started saying like I was, it's almost like how's the guy supposed to say it? Does he say, well, when we went against like, it's a we both things on both sides, like he was that team, going against his new team. and he kind of switched it like mid and started talking about, the 49ers as a we, and talking about like the Chargers as the them, thing. And I was like, like that, to be like already, like you said, to have that down, like, all right. But
he's like, I don't even know why I like that, but I did.
Yeah,
like I
yeah.
I can't even pinpoint why I felt like that was important, but it just felt like, like, okay.
Well, yeah, because you're already buying into this is a we, like the fans, the everything, it's all a we. So like, if you're gonna be here, you better be a freaking we, dude. But yeah, like I agree. Like I maybe was too hyping it up more in my head that it was gonna be like something, and like seriously, like I literally write pages and pages of notes of these guys talking, right?
Yeah.
And for his, this is all just his right here.
2 lines. Yeah, I mean, I kind of felt the same way. I was like, I didn't learn like that much, but and then I thought about it too. I was like, okay, Anthony Lynn was like the assistant head coach last season. We rarely ever heard from him either, and we never even wondered about him.
Right.
So it's like, why are we so obsessed with Brandon Staley? Maybe we should just stop.
No, I agree. And I was thinking when we heard from Chris Kocurek, like I was thinking, like, have we ever done a press conference like with him? Like he seemed like you could hear in his voice. Like now I'm somebody you guys know that have watched my shows for years already, that like my emotions come out in my voice very much. So when he's talking, like I can literally hear him shaking in his freaking voice as he's answering the questions. And it's not like he's up in front of this big ass, like all these people he's talking. Like he's in front of a couple people, like they were all, spread around. And it's just like you could hear it shaking in his voice. Like, yeah, you could tell this guy is just not used to talking to the media. Like, and at all the videos we see of him, he's down there screaming his freaking head off, cussing up a storm. And now all of a sudden he's scared to talk to his little reporters, freaking Jennifer Lee. Like, come on.
Well, it's because Jennifer Lee can throw down and she can wrestle. So that's probably why she'd kick his ass.
All right, so another guy, and this is somebody that I was actually interested, if you guys remember when we were talking about who could be the next DC, was Daniel Bullocks. And I actually loved like hearing from him. He like was so detailed to what he had to say about the players and like everything. And so he talked about about Diamador Lenore, about him, like they asked him where they prefer Diamador Lenore to play. And I love this. He goes, as long as he's on the field, I'm good. And that just shows like how much confidence this guy has in Diamador Lenore. Like, he went on to then say, he can play on the outside. He's great. He does everything we need. He's does everything we need from the inside, but for your coach to say like, like he's saying that about, Tarvarius Ward, like supposed to be your number one corner. Like you're saying this about, like our guys that's supposed to be our number two, like our home guy, like a guy that we drafted that we've watched, turn up into this, and he's like, as long as he's on the field, I'm good. And I'm like, yes, like this is the kind of confidence like we need to have, especially in that corner position is so important. Yeah. And then like he went on to say, that about the guys like that they're training and they're having work in the slot right now. So it seems, like that's what their plan is. What I got from it is that, they're hoping or trying for Diamador Lenore to be starting on the outside. And you have all these guys, he even mentioned, Sammy Womack, like guys that have been cast off and who knows what the hell they've been doing. And, about all them competing for that nickel spot. He went on to talk about Mustafa, which, you guys know is one of my favorite guys that we drafted so far. And about how he's like a fast, physical, violent player. Like he talked about as a rookie, like he's already beating him to his own office, like some days, like to where he's like, what are you doing here? Like, why are you here so early? What are you still doing here? And when he was talking about that, it made me think of a common theme lately that had been with our safeties. Like if you guys remember Hufanga, when he's not hurt, right, always would be like 98% of the time the first guy on the practice field during training camp, during, you know, anything that the media was at, everything, like always working, right? Jair Brown, like they talked about him as a rookie, how he was already like a vet coming in, like, you know, just so like working, so dedicated to everything. And now to hear him talk about Mustafa, it just like felt like all three of them like are so like they play different, right? But like so much like a 49er, like exactly what you want in the guys that you're drafting. What did you like from hearing about from Daniel Bullock's?
I actually didn't check out Bullock's interview yet, but just like based on, you know, what you're saying about Malik Mustafa, I mean, that's exciting, right? Like to have that work ethic already, I think is huge. And it falls in line with a lot of the guys that they have on this team already. I mean, you mentioned Jair Brown. Dude, that guy does sound like a vet. Like it's crazy hearing him talk. Like he talks like he has the wisdom of like a 10-year vet. It's insane. But I love that because, like, you know, the guys in the secondary are going to be around that and can soak that up. And so I think Mustafa's going to definitely, you know, benefit from that. And then as far as like Lenore, I mean, yeah, I kind of agree. I mean, he just has like the versatility that you want in your corners. And, you know, even with Mooney Ward not there, he was the outside corner, and then on those nickel situations, he was going inside. So they're still kind of using him in that way. I know Renardo Green, they want to coach up a little bit more for nickel, and I like that too.
Yeah,
because I do prefer Lenore on the outside, but I also saw that Isaac Yadam was moving out. He was going in outside when Lenore was moving to nickel, so they're involving Isaac Yadam as well. And I was excited about that pickup in free agency. So good to see that he's getting some run. That's the one thing about just like OTAs, that when some of those starters aren't there, you really get a good look at some of these other guys, and they get an opportunity to, you know, kind of mix in with some of the starters and just see how they do. So yeah, I'm excited for the secondary this season. I think it's going to be a really special group.
Yeah, me too. Just as you were talking, like that's what was going through my head. Like I'm excited for this group. Like, and this is the most excited I can remember being excited, you know, for the secondary, and gosh knows how freaking long.
Since
you know,
Whitner,
because
probably.
like how excited are you knowing that, you know, Ambry Thomas, you know, is going to be starting, or, you know, like some, even with, you know, and I hate to bring them up, but our last safety duo couldn't get a turnover to save their freaking life, no matter how much people love them, you know, and Jimmy Ward and Tart. It's like, I couldn't stand it because they were never fucking could get a damn turnover. And it's like, guys, you guys are just in the middle of the field for fucking nothing, you know? Now, like, we actually have a group that are playmakers. Like, holy shit, like we have a secondary that can make plays. Like, so yeah, I'm super excited for that. You know, one thing that they asked him about was about Sherman, and they asked, you know, since he's somebody, you know, since Daniel Bullock's one of the guys, you know, that's been around since Sherman was on the team, asked, you know, about like his effect on the locker room, you know, still like his lasting effect. And, you know, he talked about that, you know, Sherm's an unbelievable leader. He said he's the smartest player that he's ever coached. And he said that, you know, during this offseason stuff that they put together teach tape that they show the guys, like, you know, this is how to have perfect technique on this type of play. And he said that Richard Sherman is still the guy that's in that teach tape. And he said he tells the guys every year, like, as soon as one of you guys can have perfect technique and can do it better than Richard Sherman, then you can take over and be the guy in the teach tape. He's like, so you know, pretty much he challenges them with that, and nobody can do it. He's like, it's still Sherman every year because he just does it so perfect. And like that, he talked about like his football IQ is just like off the charts, you know? So I loved, you know, still hearing about Sherm, and still, you know, that he has that impact still, you know, in the teachings of what they do. And let's see. Oh, so somebody I wanted to talk to you about. They talked to Johnny Holland, the linebackers coach, and asked him as well about Devondre Campbell. And, he recently had put out a tweet about that he had lost, the love for football, and how now, he's getting that love back. And they asked, Holland about that. And he says, yeah, that they try to build a culture there that can have fun playing, but they're detailed to what they do. He says that they take away the gray area and just let the guys come in and play free and play, that at the best to what they do. And they asked him about how, they could see him fitting in Dre's place, until Dre obviously gets back. And, he talked about that. Obviously there are two different players, that Devondre's, long, he has the length, and Dre's just a physical, great player. He says, but Devondre is a student of the game. He brings that vet presence. He's excited to have him, and he will fit in good in our system. So what kind of your thoughts on him, like as a whole? Like, we know obviously he had put out tweets before that he wasn't getting used right in Green Bay, he felt like, right? And like maybe he's coming in now with, something to prove on a new team. And, I talked about this, 2 days ago with TL, and like with anything you do, not just football, but like in your job and when I was working, and everybody's job, like it's so important to love what you're doing, because the minute that you lose that love for what you're doing, like it makes every day shitty. You're watching the clock, you're counting down the hours, you don't want to get up and go to work, you're dreading, on your weekends, you're just thinking about dreading already going to work, and like all this shit, and it's like how important it is now that for him to say like he's actually loving playing football again. So what do you think that we see from him this season?
Yeah, I mean, also, like, to add to that, like, if you don't love your job, I mean, you're not putting the same pride and the same kind of like effort into
Yep.
it as you would if you did love it. So, yeah, just knowing that, Campbell does feel this way. And yeah, I know he had like mentioned it in the past that he wasn't used correctly in Green Bay, but obviously he's hopeful here in San Francisco. Him just saying this just adds to that, and me feeling like optimistic, like, oh, like maybe he could go back to, his all pro form. And even if he doesn't, even if he's like just serviceable, or just like at least make us like temporarily forget that Trey Greenlaw's not there, like I don't we're gonna
As long
miss
as we
Trey
don't
Greenlaw,
decline, right?
but we don't want to have to, right? You know what I mean? So
Mhm.
yeah, I mean, I'm excited to, I guess, see what he brings. I'm like little nervous too, right? Like just because I know how big of a shoe that is to fill.
Mhm.
And I like that Johnny Holland said, like, look, they're different players, like, because they are. You're not gonna get the same type of play out of Campbell that you do Greenlaw. You're
Right.
just not. But that doesn't mean, like, just because they're different doesn't mean one is gonna be better than the other. I mean, it not necessarily, at least. So yeah, I mean, I'm optimistic, and I look forward to seeing what Campbell can bring. And I also wonder, like, if just being on this team and buying into what this team and this defense is, which is physical, if we see a different side of Campbell, like maybe he didn't really ever show that with Green Bay, but maybe the 49ers can kind of bring that out of him a little bit more. And we do kind of see some new wrinkles in his game.
What's up, Corey? Appreciate the donation. He says, to be fair, Campbell said the same thing in Green Bay, so I don't really put much stock in it, just professional lip service.
I mean, I don't know. I wasn't familiar with him saying that with Green Bay, but I mean, like I said, I'm optimistic, but also like cautiously optimistic, because yeah, he's not gonna be Dre Greenlaw.
Exactly.
That's just realistic.
And especially like you're coming over, and not even just the play that we get from Dre Greenlaw, but the heart and the soul, and like he's a fan favorite, like you don't come in and fill those shoes, right? Like it's very unrealistic for us to even expect that from the guy. But like for him to come in and just keep that position afloat and not have a drastic decline, like until Dre can get back, you know? And still, that don't mean he's starting full time there either. Like, we still have young guys that are coming in and competing. So if for whatever reason, if he's just bullshitting and everything he's saying is nothing, and he comes in and he's just nothing,
a guy,
we have young guys too, you know, that are competing too. So we'll see.
And hopefully they step up and look better too.
Yeah, hopefully, because we didn't get much from them the rookie year. So them stepping up and doing something, like, you don't have to step that high, just give us something, right? But it would be nice if he took a big jump, especially since Greenlaw is out. All right, so one last thing before we get out of here, and they were talking to this is when they were talking to Chris Kocurek, and I just thought this was interesting because they asked him, you know, about guys like Collins and Jordan Elliott, and he went into great depth in each of them, what they bring to this defense and whatnot. But what I thought was interesting and what I wanted to talk to you about is that with the both of them, he said, I've been keeping my eyes on them. This is somebody I've been watching since they came out of college. Somebody that we met with, we had a visit with. They got drafted by another team, but I've kept my eye on them and hoping, you know, he's like, things always have a way, and the players always have a way of circling back. Now, prior to the draft, a lot was made about your 30 visits and, you know, you putting work into all this, and maybe those visits might not really mean shit. And the 49ers don't necessarily draft players that they've met with, and all different kind of things. And one thing that you had said that I remember, and it was, they might not draft them this year, right? They might not draft them, but they have met with these guys. They spent time with these guys. They've studied these guys. And when these guys come available, if it's somebody that they wanted, they already have all this info that they've got on them, and they get the guy. So I just wanted to bring up that point and say Steph's not bullshitting, because we just heard it out of Chris's mouth, his own self, that these are guys that he's met with, he's watched, he knew where they were drafted, what they've done, everything, who coached them, all this different shit about them, because he's been paying attention to them. And when they became available, he got them.
I gotta look back and find that like exact quote so I could tweet it out and be like, there. But no, I mean, even prior to this year, like, there's been a track record of the 49ers like circling back to some of these guys that they had brought in for visits before. And now that we have the draft sheet, it, you know, obviously the draft sheet tracks more than just the visits. Like, we see guys who the 49ers have just had interest in, right? And then sometimes, you know, we could see how they bring in those guys as undrafted free agents, or, you know, et cetera. And then maybe in a couple of years, we'll also see the same thing. Like, those guys will be, you know, maybe free agent acquisitions in the future. Like, it's possible, just because they've already done that homework and they're scouting on those players. So yeah, I mean, I always love anything that fits my narrative with the visits. So thank you for bringing that to my attention.
Of course. Steph, you have anything else going on this week that you want to let the good people know about, or anything, closing thoughts?
You know, nothing else this week. I suppose I'll be waiting for the next practice that is open to the media, and I might do a show after that to kind of give a recap. But other than that, I mean, it's a long weekend, Memorial Day on Monday, so just hope everyone enjoys their long weekend and, you know, has some fun, touch some grass.
There you go. Yeah, I don't have nothing for the rest of the week either. I'll be back Monday for our new Aces WNBA podcast with me and Ty. So make sure, if you guys are WNBA fans, Aces fans, that you tune into that. And yeah, like Steph said, it's a holiday weekend. So please, if you're going out, you're doing something, please stay safe. Everybody have a great weekend. Finish up your week strong. And me and Steph will see you guys back here next Thursday. Same time, same place, 3 Pacific time. Sin, that's so rude to say to people that live in the desert, you know? Like, I can't even believe that you would say something like that. I'm going to the beach as you're sweltering away there in the freaking desert. Enjoy, Sin. I hope you have an amazing time. Dina, it was so good to see you. I haven't seen you in a while. You have a great weekend as well. But yeah, Steph, I appreciate you as always. Me and Steph, we'll be back next Thursday, 3 Pacific time for the Two Goat Show. Make sure you subscribe to both channels, Steph 49K and no more 49 Faithfully. It's now Faithfully in Vegas. Yeah, subscribe to both channels and we'll see y'all next week. We're out of here. Peace.